Hey, this is Matt, and I just had to get something off my chest tonight. There's been some stuff going on in the world, and it has been seriously bugging me, and I don't know kind of what to do about it. I thought about making a post, but I thought there's just going to be a lot of naysayers and maybe arguments that I don't want to get into. And I just sat down one night, honestly, and I put down my feelings in the form of a poem, because sometimes, for whatever reason, that just helps me think more clearly when I have to try to fit the thoughts into a certain framework. And so I wanted to share that with you guys tonight. But a little background on the issue. Basically, if you haven't heard about it, there's this hot topic going on right now around schools informing parents on what their kids are doing in the classroom, at the organization, the institution, and parent rights to know, parent rights to be involved, to dictate some of the curriculum that the kids are learning in the schools that the parents are paying for, frankly, either through their taxes or through tuition. And oftentimes, if we're paying for it through our taxes, i.e. public school, the government wants to dictate to us what curriculum our children should be learning, how they should be learning, what they should be learning, and what we're allowed to know about it as parents, which is very concerning because I have a couple kids school age right now, and my wife and I have made the decision that we're going to send them to private school because we've seen and heard about some of the stuff that's going on in the public schools. And even our children being at a public school for 1 year in kindergarten, we were shocked by some of the stuff that they came home asking us and telling us about. And while we're okay with them learning some of that stuff in the proper timing, we don't want them learning it all at once when they're 6 years old. There's certain things, certain ages that are appropriate to learn certain lessons at. Things that like gender ideology and sexuality and transgenderism and LGBT, rights. And those things exist. I'm not trying to deny that. I'm not opposed to my kids learning that those things are out there, or why certain people decide to live their life a certain way. I do have certain dogmatic beliefs as a Catholic, and certain ways that I want my kids to live in, a certain lifestyle I want them to promote. It doesn't mean I'm hating or discriminating against other people. I just want my children to live in a certain way. I want to bring them up in a certain fashion, and I want them to have the appropriate time and nurturing and care and environment to let those kind of ideas sink into their kind of super ego before they are faced with kind of challenges from the outside world and the culture that we live in. I don't want the government dictating how my kids are going to think. I want them to be able to think for themselves, and more importantly, I want to have insight into what they're learning and when they're learning it, and I want to be able to give them my take on things as well. That's my privilege as a parent, and I should have that right. So this is in response to a few news articles I heard where people are being critical of that. They're being critical of the parents' rights to know if their child identifies as a gender that they were not born as. They're afraid that the parents might threaten them or hurt them or try to change their minds in some way, and that would damage the child psychologically for the rest of their life. Let's face it, there's a lot more damaging things out there, such as giving your kids hormones to delay puberty when they're a child. These could have long-lasting effects physically on the children. They're irreversible. And yet they're worried about the parents' influence on the children, and like the teachers know better. than the parents, that just doesn't sit well with me. It's really disconcerting. And then also, there was some Catholic schools in Cleveland, for instance, that were saying, no, we're going to live out our beliefs. We're not going to hire staff that are in direct opposition to the church's teachings on certain issues, such as human sexuality. And people started the mayor of Cleveland, for instance, started saying, oh, this is the most hateful thing spouting from an organization, and we're going to set this right. And, you don't hear them fighting against ideology unless it's like the Catholic Church. They're always like, hey, respect our beliefs, but they don't respect the Catholic beliefs. So if we want to teach a certain way in a Catholic school and staff it in a certain way and teach certain beliefs, why not? How is that hateful? I don't get it. And then why is sexuality such a big part of school anyway? I understand we got to teach human health and reproduction. I think the parents should be involved with that to a degree. But why is that the main thing? Why is that the defining thing in these children's lives? If we don't abide by the latest trend of changing your body to match how you're feeling on a given day, that we're somehow hateful and abusive. Where did that come from? I don't understand the emphasis on that. I want my children learning math and reading and the classics and language and music and art. I don't, when does gender ideology become the main lesson of the day? So anyway, that's a little background on this poem, and I'm going to read you my thoughts on this now. And feel free to reply to me. I don't need this to go viral. I don't really want it to go viral. I'm not the greatest poet in the world, but I think these thoughts and structuring them in this way hopefully gives credence to what I'm feeling and believing. Again, this is just my personal opinion, not reflecting any organization that I belong to. But I think maybe it does come across more articulate when I try to frame it this way. So let me know if you identified with this in somehow, if this somehow struck a chord in your life. So the poem is called Inoculation, a call for school choice. It's not indoctrination, it's inoculation. The right to choose how my child is taught, the freedom to teach them to do what they ought. A parent deserves to know what students are learning, how the government spends the money parents are busy earning. A parent deserves to know if their little girl identifies as a boy at school, and to not feel played by the state to be a fool. Let families raise their own kids, not politicians bent on re-election bids. There are certain things that's better left to mom and dad. Don't leave them wondering why their child comes home sad. And to those who chime out, Christian schools teach hate. I wonder if they appreciate the sacrifices us parents make to prevent our children from becoming yet another snowflake. Because if you stand for everything, you'll fall for anything. And right now, we as a society are on the verge of falling because we're just not listening to God's calling. Loving one another doesn't mean approving all that they do. Yes, we need to learn to walk in another person's shoe, but children must be taught that there's a right and a wrong, and we can't sell out parents for a promise and a song, believing that secular society knows how to fix our affliction, when in reality, it's the cause of this mess we're now in. Sorry, but not sorry. I want to pass on my Christian values, that I want my children to strive for the heaven which follows, remembering always this life is a test, and in this journey, there is no respite or rest. We must strive to do the right even when it's hard, knowing that God is by our side, our perpetual strength and guard. Armed with this understanding, even suffering can be made good, and our day-to-day struggles given more meaning than they would take on if an authority figure were just to say, "It's okay, be whatever you want." To your parents, I won't say, "If you come out to me as trans or gay, you know what's best for you, and I will guide you along the way." That's the lie that Satan told to Eve. And that's how our secular society, in the same way, tries to deceive. It builds an invisible wall separating Christ's church and the state, and then it creates its own religion and accuses ours of hate. They say, "Go ahead, indoctrinate your young, and there's no hate we see among such as what you preach as Christian love." But they don't get the message from above. God loves us the way we are today, but also loves us too much to let us stay that way. So I choose not to indoctrinate, but to inoculate my children from all the false hate, from the discrimination against being Christian, from the derision of feeling chosen. And I pray that the state will tear down that wall, allowing parents to choose from all the options for schooling the youth, so we don't feel forced to accept a false truth or feel imprisoned by finances or lack of access to Christian education. And I pray for the future, and I pray for our nation. Thank you for listening. Hope that gives you something to think about.